President Barack Obama has been ordering new sanctions against Iran, hitting its central bank and giving U.S. agencies the ability to freeze assets linked to Tehran. At the same time, U.S. battleships are running naval drills off the country's east coast, with the war game scenario reportedly depicting a potential conflict with the Islamic Republic. Let's get some discussion on this with Shirin Shafai from the School of Oriental and African Studies, joining us from London. She's also a representative of the Campaign Against Sanctions and Military Intervention in Iran, so we know where she stands. In recent days, not a single new threat has emerged from Tehran, and we see the U.S. president ordering new sanctions. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's not just the recent days where no threat has emerged from Iran. Iran has never actually threatened the U.S. Its policy has been always defensive. But in terms of the threats coming from the U.S., especially this recent sanctions against Iran's central bank, I think that they're mostly produced or directed for domestic consumption in the United States. As we get closer to the presidential elections in the U.S., we see that each side trying to seem as being tougher vis-a-vis Iran, and this is another move by President Obama to satisfy either his rivals or the supporters of his campaign that he's actually taking a tough stand vis-a-vis Iran.
Now, the West continues claiming sanctions are targeting Iran's controversial nuclear program. Tehran has, though, stepped up cooperation with the IAEA. Nuclear inspectors planning a new mission in a few weeks. So why not wait for the outcome of the checks before new sanctions?
Well, the U.S. problem has never been about Iran's nuclear program. It's really, as I said, an excuse for the U.S. to create more confrontation with Iran. And it's really sad to see that the U.S. is undermining the work, the fantastic work that the IAEA is doing with Iran. And Iran itself is trying very hard to keep the environment with the IAEA professional in the face of the recent assassination of Iranian scientists, which really was a big blow to the relationship between Iran and the IAEA. But Iran is trying to keep the environment professional in the face of public pressure coming from Iran, which wants the officials to be more strict with the IAEA. So the U.S. is really undermining the work of an international organization of the IAEA. And if there is going to be any peaceful way out of this conflict, IAEA is going to play a crucial role, and it shouldn't be undermined.
In response to Europe's oil embargo, Iran has vowed to stop crude supplies to some EU states immediately, not naming which ones they were. Do you think we should expect from Tehran in response to these fresh American sanctions?
Well, as I said, I think these sanctions are more for American domestic consumption, and I don't think that Iran is going to be provoked into a reactionary position when these threats are coming outside from the U.S. Because if Iran were to respond to every threat that is coming from there, we should have had 10 wars until now between Iran and the U.S. And Iran is more interested in negotiations and diplomacy, and is following a path of logic and diplomacy to resolve the issue that exists between itself and the West. So I don't see any threats coming from Iran in response to these new sanctions, which are, by the way, not very new. They were declared in December. It's just President Obama signed them into force today.
And in the atmosphere of confrontation and sanctions, how likely do you think it is that six-party talks with Iran may resume?
That's an interesting question. I mean, yes, the U.S. is trying to poison the negotiating forums that exist between Iran and the West. But I don't. As we move closer to the U.S. presidential election, so on the one side, I don't think that we are going to see much coming out of these negotiations if, in fact, they resume. Because any diplomatic achievement with Iran for the U.S. is seen as a sign of weakness inside U.S. itself. So I think that President Obama would like to avoid that. But at the same time, I don't think that it's going to lead into more confrontation, because at the same time, President Obama seems to be still a little bit worried about public opinion and international community's response to any further escalation of conflict between the U.S. and Iran.
Shirin Shafai from the Campaign Against Sanctions and Military Intervention in Iran, speaking with us live from London. Thanks for your time.